get some more names for you for the waiver wire. Jamey, who are the top 3 quarterbacks?
Well, we talked about 2 of them. Mariota would be one for me if there is no Jaden Daniels, but something you have to keep an eye on there. 2 would be CJ Stroud. Just a great matchup. I know he hasn't exactly been a great fantasy quarterback since coming back from the concussion, but much better situation. He's been much better at home. The last 2 games for him were on the road. And then I have Tyler Shuck third. He's been over 20 fantasy points 3 of his last 4 games. And his best game during that stretch was against Carolina when he had 22.9 points in week 10. So hopefully history repeats itself. But Shuck, with his arm, with his legs, he's doing some nice things right now. So not a bad situation for him.
Well, those are not like super great options, are they?
Well, I mean, again, when you bring up Brock Purdy and Jackson Dart and some of the guys that might be available in shallower leagues, then yes, you'd rather have those guys than this trio. Mariota's certainly been able to hang with those guys from a point perspective situation, so he's probably a little bit safer. But yes, Stroud has been very difficult to trust. But again, you're playing against Arizona. That's what you're hoping for. And in the case of Shuck, again, I don't think anybody's expected him to be performing like he's performing. So he's been better than some of the guys we've been counting on.
Dave, who are the top 3 running backs?
Devin Singletary is at the top of the list for me, 57% available. The 1B back for the Giants, and I think he will be the one who bellies up at the goal line. Good matchup this week against the Commanders. Blake Corum is next. We've seen his role improve over the last couple of weeks. He had a huge game last week. I don't think he can do that this week, but I think he'll still be in the neighborhood of like 10 touches. You're hoping he scores. He's not a great start. He's more of a desperation start, but man, if anything happens to Kyron Williams or if the Rams just are able to run the ball effectively this week, then by all means, Blake Corum will be great. Then there's a giant gap as far as running backs to pick up. I've got Dylan Sampson third. I'm not real excited about it. He might get you 10 PPR points. He's definitely not the lead back for the Cleveland Browns, but he will catch some passes in what I think will end up being a close game with the Bears on Sunday.
Dylan Sampson. Okay, so Dave, I'm going to ask you what I asked Jamey earlier. Who would be, let's say, your 2 or 3 favorites if all of these players were available? And they're not in most CBS leagues, but Sleeper, Yahoo, I see ESPN, I see the roster percentages for a lot of these guys are much lower. So Gainwell, Ramondre Stevenson, Tyrone Tracy, Chuba Hubbard, Devin Neal, Tony Pollard, Chris Rodriguez.
Tracy's a top 24 running back for me this week in PPR. So he would be at the top of the list. I've got Neal second. I've got Gainwell next.
Okay. Let's go to the wide receivers. Jamey, who are the top 3 wide receiver priorities?
Luther Burden is number 1, hoping to build off what he did last week, depending obviously on Romo Dunze's health. So keep that in mind when it comes to Burden, because I don't know if he'll be as productive or have the chance to be as productive if Odunze is there. I have Jaden Reed next, played the 3rd most snaps of the Packers wide receivers this past weekend. I think he's going to get better as the season progresses. At least that's the hope. So he would be the guy that I would look to, especially if you have a bye this week. And then this is very similar to Jalen Wright. So correct me on the correct pronunciation of Ryan's last name.
Flanoy.
One more time, Adam.
No R, apparently. Flanoy.
So he would be third if CeeDee Lamb was out. Not a great matchup, but obviously you saw what he was capable of doing, which is dominant against Detroit. So you want pieces of this Dallas offense, and not a bad guy to stash on your team just in case.
All right, let's solve this mystery once and for all, because the audience told me I was saying it wrong. All right, I have an NFL pronunciation guide, so Flanoy is how it is spelled out here. All right, Dave, top 3 tight ends.
I'm confused on the pronunciation. You're telling me it's Flonoy?
No, Flanoy.
Flanoy?
Like you're flanoying me. Oh,
I haven't heard his name said that way ever.
Yeah, Ryan Flanoy.
I've always heard Flournoy. All right, tight ends. Double check for Fannin, double check for Pitts. Isaiah Likely is the best tight end that you can get off the waiver wire this week. He could leave you high and dry, but he's also been the last 2 weeks, 6 targets minimum, double-digit PPR points minimum. Should have had a monster game last week. Still had a really good game last week. And I think Lamar Jackson's getting better. And he's taking on the Bengals that allowed, well, it was like at least 7 or 6 PPR points and change to 3 different tight ends last week. 2 of them were huge. Another one, Jackson Hawes, caught a touchdown. So likely to me is the best tight end you can get off the waiver wire. Then it's a gap, Gesicki and Dalton Schultz. And that's my top 3. Likely Gesicki, Schultz.
There's no matchup quite like Cincinnati, but Schultz against Arizona, that's a really good matchup too. And he's just been a lot more reliable than Likely. Jamey, you also have Likely number 1. Is it close with Schultz?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, Schultz has been very consistent. 2 of the last 3, not great, but for the last 6, depending how long you want to look at the sample size, 11 or more in 4 of his last 6. But 2 of the last 3, had the Buffalo matchup in there, which wasn't good. And then last week was a little frustrating. But I think you're just taking the chance on his involvement in the offense and the matchup against the Cardinals, which is top 5 and top 10 in most fantasy points allowed to the position.
Yeah, Schultz had a touchdown call back last week at the Chiefs, but 2 of the last 3 games have been bad for him, but they've been Buffalo is number 1 against tight ends, and Kansas City, I think, is number 6 or 7. Arizona's 25th. Dave, you didn't mention Colston Loveland. Interested in him? He's got the Browns. They are 11th. Been pretty good lately against tight ends.
I don't mind him. I think he's a high floor PPR tight end. I just like the other guys a little bit more. In the case of Gesicki and Schultz, I'd rather take the chance on them over Loveland at this point. But you can put him next up on the list behind him. And if you like him better, go ahead.
Just keep in mind with Gesicki, we've already seen this once already with no T. Higgins against Baltimore, and he was bad.
Right. So total high risk, high reward type play with Gesicki. But am I saying that right? Gesicki?
I think it's Gesicki, isn't it? I mean, it's spelled Gesicki. Let's see. Good. See if he's even.
You rocked my world on
Gesicki.
Ryan F. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get it.
So, all right, let's recap.
Is it Loveland or Loveland?
Loveland. So let's recap. Marcus Mariota, top 3 quarterbacks. Marcus Mariota at the Giants, CJ Stroud against Arizona, Tyler Shuck against Carolina. But obviously, take a look at Jackson Dart, Brock Purdy, maybe even Sam Darnold. You guys like Darnold this week?
Low end starter.
Yeah.
Okay. Running backs, Devin Singletary, Blake Corum. Singletary's against Washington, Corum against Detroit, Dylan Sampson at Chicago. But, of course, take a look at all these shallow league guys I keep mentioning. Wide receivers, Luther Burden against Cleveland, Jaden Reed at Denver, Ryan Flanoy against
I just
Minnesota.
got it from the Cowboys. You're right.
Yeah. And tight ends. It's not me who was right. It was the audience who called me out for I was saying Flournoy. Tight ends, Isaiah Likely at Cincinnati, Mike Gesicki against Baltimore, Dalton Schultz against Arizona. Of the 12 players that I read, unless I need someone very specifically, I need this position this week, and maybe I have a bye, or maybe I guess if this were just the regular season, I think Luther Burden would be my favorite. I don't know how long Odunze's out, so it's obviously contingent on that. But he led the team in receiving. I think he's really good. You guys feeling that? These other guys feel just kind of 1 week. Most.
Well, I mean, yeah. In the case of the 2 running backs that we like, whatever whichever one you want to listen to, me or Dave, they could be great, they could be terrible. If Tyrone Tracy's healthy and dominating touches again, and Singletary doesn't score, he's going to be bad. And obviously, Jalen Wright is so tied to the injury situation for Devon Achane, he's going to be next to nothing if Achane's healthy. In the case of the quarterbacks, Jane Daniels may play, so that ruins Mariota, and CJ Stroud has been terrible the last 2 weeks fantasy wise. So I think it's between Burden and the tight ends.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, so that's those top 4 positions. And Dave did not say Jalen Wright, but Jamey has Jalen Wright as his number 1 priority this week. He laid it out for you earlier in the show. Now it is time for coverage you can count on, sponsored by Nationwide. Jamey, give us a DST to stream this week.
Yeah, and depending on the roster percentage, it could be the same one for the next 2 weeks, especially if the Colts quarterback situation is still a mess. So it's the 49ers. They get the Titans. I know we got burned by this last week because the Browns decided to not show up and play defense this week, but this has been arguably the best matchup of any DST for the season. The Titans offense is typically bad. I don't think Tony Pollard will do that. I think Cam Ward will probably turn the ball over. They're coming off their bye. They should be rested, hopefully as close to healthy as they can be for what they're dealing with for the course of the season. But this should be a great scenario for the 49ers DST to be a league winner. And as Dave said, the Jaguars right behind them with their matchup as well. against the Jets and Brady Cook, or even a banged up Tyrod Taylor, or even Justin Fields, whoever starts at quarterback for the Jets. We've seen some bad play at times. Taylor has been the most competent, as you would expect, but Jaguars defense at home, their last 2 games at home, Chargers, they destroyed. Last week they were fantastic. I think they'll be great again this week. So it's well, I guess Daniel Jones getting hurt, helped that. But there's a lot to like about both these DSTs. But if you're just looking for one, the top one is the 49ers.
Okay. Yeah. And boy, it could really make such a difference in your roster. So maybe you make them. Dave already made the case to make the Niners and the Jaguars your top overall priority. Another DST that's playing out of its mind right now is the Dolphins. In 4 straight great games, 10 sacks in their last 2 games, 5 of their last 6 they've been really good, with Baltimore being the only exception. And they're at Pittsburgh on Monday night. They weren't on your list, Jamie. You have any interest in them?
56? I think they're roster in too many leagues, if I'm not mistaken.
56%.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
But I thought, I mean, look, I don't know that we should. I don't know we should buy into them.
This is probably, as strange as it is to say, their toughest test of that stretch.
One of those teams was Buffalo, but other than that,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I like them, but I would trust the Niners or the Jaguars more than the Dolphins.
And I mean, Rodgers' history, like he's not going to throw a lot of interceptions without something fluky happening.
Yeah,
should have had one this week.
He does not throw picks. All right, those are some DSTs, and that was coverage you can count on, sponsored by Nationwide. And let's talk about kickers, Jamie. Who are the kickers to get?
I think you go Cam Little against the Jets. They give up a lot of fantasy points at the position. McPherson, last time he faced Baltimore, had 24 fantasy points. I don't know if you want to count on that, but they struggled in the red zone. First game back for Joe Burrow. Eddie Pinheiro is expected to be healthy. He's been great for the majority of his tenure with the 49ers. So as long as he's playing, you take a chance on him against the Titans. Harrison Mevis and Butthead against the Lions. So you could count on that there. And then Chris Boswell, coming off a strong game, gets the Dolphins at home. I think it will probably be a low-scoring game. So Boswell's been good for the majority of the season too.